So I'm here at the immigration place here in Cebu City, Philippines. And, for somebody who, supports a lot of what Trump does, I don't think immigration laws are illegal. I've been to, I think, 17 or 18 countries now. I've always complied with the immigration laws. I've stayed here for almost a year. I was in Ireland for over a year total, back and forth. The UK for 6 months, so on and so forth. Mexico for 6 months. I've always complied with the immigration laws. I don't think they're racist, and I don't think they're harmful. I think, the way society is built, I would prefer not to believe in borders, but the way society is built, they need immigration, restrictions, and they need to bottleneck that. I really see this is the immigration place that I'm at. It really just seems, par for the course. I mean, out of all the countries I've been to, I've always had to deal with immigration. I've never overstayed my visa intentionally. Last month, actually, the month before last, I overstayed because I had paid for an extension and then left and then come back. And that extension was for several months, but when I left, it canceled it out, and then I had to renew again. So anyway, that was the only time I overstayed, and they forgave me. I paid a penalty on my way, whatever, no big deal. But anyway, no, it just seems rational to have immigration laws because of government assistance, of infrastructure issues, of taxation, and housing, and all the other stuff that comes along with immigration. So they do need to bottleneck it a little bit. They can't just have people coming and going as they please without checks and balances. So I just don't believe it's racist. I think that everybody who's calling, anybody who supports immigration laws a Nazi, a fascist, a racist, all that, I think they're being ridiculous. If they really look at it and understood what immigration is for and why it exists, it just makes sense. The other issues were these liberals, progressives, Antifa, whatever, calling everybody Nazis. This has been going on for 20 years, maybe 15 years, where everybody who doesn't agree with these people are literal Nazis, literally Hitler, whatever. And the whole idea of calling everybody that, it really lessens the impact of what actually happened in World War II, of the actual Nazis, the actual National Socialists. The sad part is these people don't realize that it's the Marxist type governments, the ones that, align themselves in that political fashion of Marxism, whether it be communism or socialism or Marxism itself. They're the ones that are mostly responsible for mass democide of hundreds of millions of people over the last 100 years. So many, governments that were Marxist-related, Marxist, dictated in most cases, are the ones that killed their people in mass. And so to, associate that with somebody who simply supports immigration laws or simply supports, biological facts like men are men and women are women, and you can't be the other, you just are what you are, whatever you were born, that it's true. And this is something that some guy who came to my channel recently brought up, that, Trump's policies are racist and anybody who supports him is racist because X, Y, and Z. And he's like, because they point out the crime statistics, that's racist. The crime statistics are this. That is shocking. And I don't believe it's racially motivated. I believe it's culturally motivated. But 6.5% of the U.S. population are black male. And 61% of the U.S. population are white. Half, you cut that in half, it's like, 30 some odd percent are white male. Yet 6.5% of the population, black males, commit over 50% of violent crimes in the U.S. Now, that's just not just some trumped up drug charge, somebody planted drugs or, did something that's nefarious.
Open and shut case, Johnson. I saw this once before when I was a rookie. Apparently this nigger broke in and hung up pictures of his family everywhere. Well, let's sprinkle some crack on him and get out of here.
That's a police officer, but that's, something with an actual victim. that goes to actual court and is actually tried in front of a jury, and in a jury of their peers are convicted. And 51% of those violent crimes and murders are done by 6.5% of the population. It's not racist to say that. It's just a fact. And it's cultural. It's that, you know, our government, our liberal friends in government want to be so helpful that they sponsor things like minimum wage laws, which edges a certain population out of the market. This is what the Davis-Bacon Act did in the 30s.
Again, I think back to the Moynihan. Well, no, I think so. The Moynihan report in '65, and he was very alarmed by the illegitimacy rate of 25% among African Americans. By the way, in fairness to the late Moynihan, we should point out one reason he was alarmed by this was his own father had walked out on the family when he was 10 years old. He experienced what it meant to kids to have one parent. Okay, and now it's all gotten dramatically worse for whites and Hispanics and black, for everybody. And then I think back beyond that to your experience of Harlem. You drop out of high school and do what? Go on welfare? Start cashing? No, you went to work. And you spent some of that money to buy some inexpensive encyclopedias.
Yeah.
And the Harlem was sick. So, but I feel this council, it's almost a council of despair in that world just seems so utterly vanished.
No question.
So your argument is if we can stand up to the welfare state, we can somehow get back to that world. The family structure will reassert itself.
Oh, that's going to be reconquering the same ground, which is very tough to do, but it can be done. I was so lucky. At the time I had no clue about all this. I left home in 1948. Many decades later, I learned that the unemployment rate among black teenagers in 1948, 16, 17-year-olds, was 9.4%. Among whites of the same age, it was 10.2%. So both blacks and white teenagers had only a fraction of the unemployment that they have today.
You were expected to work. You were expected to be able to get a job.
And more importantly, the jobs were there for you. This is because of a fluke, really. The minimum wage law in the United States, Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, was passed with specified rates of pay that you're supposed to get. Almost immediately, inflation took off during the 1940s. So by 1948, those numbers that were in the law were meaningless.
Oh, I see.
In other words, when I started out as a Western Union messenger, the minimum wage was 40 cents an hour. I started out at the bottom at 65 cents an hour. So it was the same as if there was no minimum wage. And this is what happened. You had this, and I was so lucky. I of course, had no clue about any of this. Now a black kid 20 years later comes in there. People have become compassionate. They raised the minimum wage, so he can't get a job.
Got it.
And I don't think it does any community any good to have a whole lot of teenage males hanging around on the streets with no job and nothing to do.
Right. Tom, but another thought here. You're describing...
Liberals try to show their concern for the poor by raising the level of minimum wage laws. Yet they show no interest in hard evidence that minimum wage laws create disastrous levels of unemployment among young blacks in this country.
Thomas Sowell will talk about this, a black scholar in economics. Or they subsidize single mothers, and they produce more families with single mothers. And, you know, it's a fact that kids raised without a father are 900% more likely to involve themselves in antisocial behavior. Thank you, sir. And the antisocial behavior includes violent crime and, you know, prostitution and drugs and things like that. So they should subsidize families staying together, not families breaking up. They should motivate people to stay together instead of breaking up. They shouldn't be, you know, promoting the mass genocide of the black population through abortion. There's a lot of cultural things that are set forth by white liberals that hurt the black population and always have for the last 100 years. So That's my take on it. Immigration is not racist. Pointing out crime statistics is not racist. And promoting the idea of keeping families together and subsidizing that rather than the opposite is not racist. That's my take on it.
A subnote to the fella pretending that I deleted his comments on my video. I did not. My words on this topic have survived decades on my blogs and on the Internet Archive. I am not ashamed of what I have had to say, and your argument was trash, which is why you deleted what you wrote. If you really feel like your words have substance, don't hide behind an anonymous account and play Jussie Smollett activism. Use your voice. This is YouTube after all. Make your own video and reply. I couldn't delete that, now could I? Sadly, I've saw this Jussie Smollett activism hundreds of times already. It's pathetic.